What's up, everybody? Been looking forward to this podcast episode for quite a while. I have sat in front of me an incredible guest today, Dr. Ashkan Pitchforth. Dr. Ash has achieved no small feat of growing his business to 20 dental practices. We learned today how he did that, the journey, and also the things that he's learned along the way, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into this that is massively counterintuitive, and that's the sort of information that we want to give airtime to on the Dentistry Invest podcast, because people just do not know these things. Looking forward to this podcast episode as ever. Dr. Ash, absolutely thrilled to have you today on the Dentistry Invest podcast. I've been looking forward to this episode for a little while, because obviously, when you go from 0 to 20 dental practices, you learn a few things. There's a reason why only so many people ever get to that stage. And you know what? Of course it's about the learnings. Of course it's about the wisdom. Of course it's about all of those things. It's about determination. It's about groundedness, I would say, as well. Like not getting too high on your own supply, I suppose. You know, remaining grounded, I would say, is part of that as well, because you want your team to continue to be behind you and everything along those lines. Yep. It's about all of those things, but it's also just about the really niche learnings that, how can I say this? I think, tell me if you agree with me or not, right? I think in business, a lot of the best business people I've met, what a big limiting belief that I had was back in the day was I conflated progress in business with somebody being far smarter than me and far more capable. You know what I mean? Yeah. The more I've been in that world is the more I've realized that actually it's about the know-how and just knowing little niche tiny things that people don't necessarily realize that you can apply to your life and use. And all of a sudden, for me, it stopped being less about me putting these people on a pedestal. I felt like I was more similar to them, and I felt like I just had to go out there and find the info. And that's the point of the Dentistry Invest podcast and the point about this conversation today. What are your thoughts on what I've just said? What do you think?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, what we do is not rocket science, certainly. It's if you break it down, it's actually quite simple, but a lot of people don't see it. I guess a lot of people focus on a problem rather than the solution, and they don't see what everyone else sees, or what some people want to see, and what people choose not to see. Ooh. Either through ignorance or laziness or just conformity. So you've got to. I always say in our office, I always say to people when there is a problem, just don't focus on the problem. Always look for the solution. Because if you focus on the problem, you'll never find the solution. And that's what we did, growing this business and developing it and founding it from back in 2015. We started off with one practice. And then when I say we, I refer to me and my ex-wife. It's always been a 50-50, I think it's synergy, almost. And the thing with my ex-wife beautifully is that she plays a significant role, but is not the face of it. And you've got to have, the way I look at it is you've got to have someone that is, I would say I'm creative, but then she's like kind of she's the dragon out of Dragon's Den. So I would pitch my creativity to her, and because she's got the sound, she's got a voice of reason, she would then tell me if something's good, rubbish, or absurd. Because if you're creative, if you're a creative person, you can't tell whether your idea is good or not. A lot of people would then turn around, you just can't get it. It's because that's why you're creative. You come out with ideas, and some of them are useless and not so great, but some of them are perfect and fantastic. But you need to almost have a relationship with someone, like a business partner, who will turn around and say, yeah, that's great, that's not great, this is great, and then you can then run with it. So she plays a significant part. So that's why when I refer to as we, it's me and her. And I would say that if you look at the business, she was probably the founder. So what happened in the sense that, like, it was her idea to have a dental practice. And also it was her idea to be like, okay, maybe rather than having one, we can have two. So she founded almost that concept of we can have more, but also when we had the first practice, making sure it was perfect in every way it could be before we then upscaled it. and then I will be the entrepreneur. I'm essentially then the entrepreneur that came in, then was like, okay, so now we've got the basics, and I can now scale this thing and grow this thing. And then you need, obviously, then at the end of it, a CEO, or i.e. like a corporate structure that then runs it. Because if you don't have the corporate structure then runs it, then it's going to fall apart. So you should have your CEO, your CFO, and all that kind of, when it gets to a certain level. So the way we've done it really was just the standard route that everyone else does it. You find a practice that you want to buy. You could have set up by squat, but we did an investment first. You raise a deposit. So you put the deposit down, you borrow money from the bank, and that gives you your first practice. But then the key thing is then how do you go from 1 to 2? Because usually when you have one practice, the bank will be quite strict in its covenants by saying you can't borrow a certain amount within a certain period of time, and you need to make sure obviously that your cash in the bank, or your cash flow, obviously your cash flow is a certain percentage of your turnover and God knows what, or you're leveraging, and all those various types of factors, which not many people realise is actually written in the kind of small print. So the way we kind of done it was when we bought our first practice, which was the hand cross one, for £486,000, and we put in like the classic 20%. So obviously we had bank debt in there. We in 1 year we turned that practice from generating to turning over. At that time, it was turning over like 300,000. So it was worth 486,000, but it was turning over 300,000 to then turning over 900,000 in its first year. So almost tripled its turnover. So then I was able to go back to the bank and say, right, now we have more equity in this. Can we release more equity to then buy our second one?
Nice.
So that's how we managed to buy the second one. Then when we wanted to buy the third one, I went back to the bank again after then doing that with the same with the second one, turning over. But then they said no. Because obviously we year one we did one, and then year two, obviously we had the second one. But then in kind of like middle of year two, I wanted to buy a third, and they're like, well, no, you can't because you're leveraged too much. You're maxed out. Plus, obviously, we had some rental properties and our own house we're living in, etc., etc. So then I thought, okay, well, how can then I raise money to then buy, obviously, the third one? So part of it is when you're going through business is you have to be tight. So everything you earn, essentially, if you're looking to scale, looking to grow, you need to keep cash in the business. So you have to live a modest lifestyle. You can't have a luxurious house and drive a luxurious car and go on luxurious holidays. You have to scale it all down. And I remember at one point in time, we were living in a one-bedroom flat. We didn't even have Sky TV. It was the Freeview stuff. Our direct debit, everything was very, very low. Driving around in a clapped-out Honda that was falling apart. So every cash that was being generated remained within. We were then working as well as clinicians, not inside those two practices, a little bit inside those two practices, but then outside as well. So we were able to draw money into the business. Very similar to Alexander McQueen, who I love, is a very, the late great Alexander McQueen, who's one of the British darlings of fashion. In order for him to grow his McQueen company, he actually worked as the creative director for Givenchy. So the money that he earned from Givenchy, he then obviously was able to put into McQueen. So that's how he then grew his McQueen business. So essentially that's what we did. We were working for other people to draw the money in to then put into the business, obviously to keep that cash. And then we actually then, at that point in time, borrowed money off of, I don't know if it exists anymore, but it was an online platform called Rate Setter.
Okay, wow.
It was like, so you just went on there, and as a dentist, we were each able to get £200,000 each.
Okay.
You just went on there. You didn't have to say what it was for. It could just be for a yacht. All they wanted to know is you're a dentist, and they wanted to see money coming into your bank account every month, which we could prove. And
just a quick question on that, because I'm listening with intent. I'm going to say the interest rate, and that was very
ridiculous.
High.
It was, I think, like 21%. It was crazy.
Days.
I remember looking and thinking, this is ridiculous and it's crazy, but this is the only way we can raise almost like the shortfall.
Yes.
In order to buy the third practice. Then was able to buy the third practice with that loan, and then from that point I was like, I need to now clear this loan because this, the interest rate is absolutely ridiculous. Then the fourth practice obviously came up, and but then I was able to go back to the bank, and what I did is I switched banks. So at the start we started out with Wesleyan. I was then able to move to Metro Bank for the 4th dental practice purchase, because I was able to then, so the best thing to do is to, if you go back to the same bank, they almost like will know your history, but then will say kind of like the computer says no, we can't do anymore. But what you want to do is then, if you go to a completely different bank, and maybe banks also that think outside the box, and Metro Bank at the time, and I still think to this day they do it, their lending criteria is very different to, say, your normal conventional like Barclays or Lloyds, which have all these tick boxes. So I was able to go to them and say, right, look what I achieved. Obviously, with the first 2 practices, I was able to raise bank debt through Wesleyan. I then obviously got myself this huge rate setter loan, but I've ploughed all this cash in. Now we've got 3 practices, we've got a 4th one on the horizon. I really want to buy this 4th one. Can we look at restructuring and refinancing the whole gig? So you take over the Wesleyan, you buy the Wesleyan debt, you buy then the rate setter debt, bundle it all together into one Metro Bank loan, which will then allow me to have release some more equity, because those practices are cash generating as well, and they're increasing their turnover, which is what they like to see, plus the EBITDA's there, to then buy the 4th one. And that's what we've done. By the 4th one, we then refinanced everything then with Metro Bank. The 5th one then was bought purely on cash, because it was a smaller purchase. It was just like a 2 surgery. And then again, when we went to buy the 6th one, which was a bundle of a 6th and a 7th, we then again refinanced that whole thing with Santander. So then we switched to another bank. So again, doing the same concept. So I think for the listeners, really, the way I done it was you don't live a lavish lifestyle. You have to cut back personally, everything. We started the business in 2015. My daughter, who is now 14, was born in 2012. So we started this business, our first practice was 2015. We didn't actually go away on a family holiday until 2018. So for 3 years, we never left the UK.
Yeah.
We didn't have a holiday. That was it. We just didn't have a holiday. Yeah, I feel guilty now, because obviously my daughter wasn't able to go away and have the time abroad, and I feel that, and my ex-wife wanted that, and I kind of stripped that back from her and said, no, we've got to be sensible, etc., etc. But can you see, you've got to have those sacrifices. So you've got to you don't live a lavish lifestyle. You've got to plough your cash back into the business, or just don't take it out. Another route is working again for someone else and then drawing the money in, which is good, because you're putting money into it, because your own business can only generate a certain amount, but if you're working as an associate for someone else, then you're drawing it in. And then again, it's just jumping from bank to bank to bank when you're refinancing. And then that's how we were able to grow to that level. And then throughout that journey, that growth after that, all the other purchases were either cash, so we stuck with Santander for quite a while, we either cash purchases, or we then set up our squat practices, but from NHS tenders. And then at one point, we then went back to Santander when we were buying another, I think we were like at 15, and we wanted to buy like a 16 and 17, then we were able to then refinance more and raise more capital. And then we moved from being a conventional high street client to being a corporate client, because there's a certain point in time when you have that crossover. So generally speaking, you will deal with your local business bank manager, either in NatWest or one of these high street banks, and your business banking. There'll come a point where probably you're at between practice kind of like, I would say 12 to 15, certainly going above 15, when you then have to convert to be almost like a corporate client. But then when you're converting from 15 and above, that's where they want to see all the structures in place. Like you have a full finance function, a full finance team. You have HR processes in place, whether that's inside or you're outsourcing it, but just so that you have all those systems and those structures, so you're not going to cock it up, because you could essentially, if HMRC, find that you're not doing taxes correctly, then you're stuffed. And you've grown something else, and then you don't be hit with a huge tax bill, and then it'd be a disaster. So that's kind of the growth in a nutshell of how kind of we done it.
Sure.
In summary, and of course, along the way there was ups and downs. It wasn't an easy ride. It was points in time when it was disastrous, almost. But I think also you've got to know what you're going in for. That's another thing. Like you've got to, from the outset, like the way I look at business is that a business can be successful based upon what you want to get out of it. Like you can't say, oh, this business is more successful than that business because we have a bigger turnover or we've got more sites, because you might only want to have a business that only has 3 practices. It's only going to say turnover £3 million a year, and that's maybe going to give you, I don't know, an income of say £500,000. If you're content with that, then that's what you need to, from the outset, that's kind of where you need to know you're going with it, because those decisions are going to govern, or that plan will govern obviously what the decisions will be. But if your intent is actually, no, I don't want to limit, or I want to get to 20, or I want to get to 50, or I want to get to, or I want to sell out as well. Like you've got to know what your intentions are, because that's the important thing. If your intention is, you know what, I'm just going to buy and build, almost, which is kind of like a business model. I'm going to just get into a lot of debt, build, and then I'll get to say 11 practices, and then I'm going to then sell to PE. And that's essentially how Portman was built by Sam. You know, he I think 11, but that was his intention from the start, is to exit a PE at a very early stage. Is that then you've got to obviously be thinking about your EBITDA as you go along. Whereas if you're like us, there was no intention to sell. We own the whole thing. When we were growing it, we weren't too worried about EBITDA. So the EBITDA dropped down a bit. We weren't too fussed, as long as, again, it met the banking covenants. So it ticked all those boxes. But I think from the outset, you've got to know where you are. And if you don't want that, if you want to have a really good lifestyle and you do it, that's fine. But then appreciate then you're not going to maybe get to practice number 6 or practice number 7, because if you're spending £200 a day topping up your Rolls Royce, then with petrol, then you're not going to have spare cash that you're constantly drawing money out of the business. So you've got to know where you're going with it.
Sure. And you know what? It's timeless lessons like that. Even though that is, I guess, how can you say this? It's intuitive, isn't it, to think like that? We struggle to do it. It's like going to it's like staying slim, right? You eat less and you go to the gym, right? Easier said than done, right? And it's the same when it comes to your finances and what have you. You know, it's just really hard to cut back, and that's what keeps people in the rat race, so to speak. And I really like that you were saying that, because you're living proof that, you know, there's some logic to that austerity in the early days and just powering through. And I love this saying, right? I heard this saying once, and it was, capitalism is jam today or more jam tomorrow. Yeah. If you can hold back, you know what I mean? If you can kind of preserve your simoleons and, you know, do something with them. But no, listen, I love that. And I guess when I was listening to you talk then, there was loads of questions just swirling around in my head, but like, oh, what about this and what about that? So I'm going to try to concentrate right now and maybe ask some of the best ones that I feel came to me, because really we could go anywhere with this, couldn't we, right now? And I guess the first thing to ask would be, and I feel like this is where a lot of people struggle, is what was your criteria insofar as selecting the practices that you'd like to purchase again and again and again? Did you have a practice profile, or were you just like, lick your finger, put it in the air, that one looks good, I don't know, something along those lines, a little bit of both?
100%. We had a criteria, and the criteria was it had to have an NHS contract. And the reason for that is because I knew that the NHS contract would then pay essentially the loan. Because that's important. The thing is that if you don't pay your suppliers, you're going to piss someone off. But it's not the end of the world, you know. You should do, right? And maybe you can delay 1 month and you get a little bit behind, you catch up. If you don't pay your bank loan off, you're stuffed. And you're stuffed today, but you're also stuffed next year. Because the problem is that you've broken that relationship. And that relationship will continue with you. They will see that you've had a bad credit. The thing with an NHS practice is it guaranteed. NHS practice, you had an NHS contract and UDAs, it guaranteed you every single month you'll get 1/12 of that. So then that, as long as that was enough, obviously, and then you've taken off the expenses of the associates, things like that, to service the loan. So serviceability is really important. To service that loan, then that fitted into our model. So the way we would look at it is, say, for instance, you had a practice that was being sold and it had 30,000 UDAs. I would look, obviously, the NHS contract. If the NHS contract would say £1 million, for instance, factoring in the associate costs, materials, all that kind of stuff, if that then left £150,000 at the end, pure operational profit, cash profit, so not bogus profit, actual cash profit, and then the bank loan per year, so the repayments per year, capital and interest, so combined together, was say 120, so then it left a 30,000 kind of like leeway, that would work. That meant that when we were looking at buying a practice, I was thinking, okay, so therefore that functions. That can service the loan, and if that then I extrapolate it the other way. So then I look and think, okay, so if the loan that I'm paying off is 100, if my loan repayments are say 120,000 per annum, what actually therefore am I borrowing at the start? So therefore, then you go backwards, and then that will say, okay, therefore I can borrow £2 million. And then I would look and think, okay, is that practice being sold for 2 million? If that practice is being sold for 2 million or less, I would then go and buy it, because I know that I could then service that debt. So it had to have an NHS contract. So all of our practices have NHS contracts. And then what I did is that during the growth phase, is the things with NHS contract, they're capped. Yes, you might be able to go back to the ICB now, or back in the day it was called NHS England, or the local area teams, or PCTs, whatever you want to call it. And, can you give me an extra couple of thousand UDAs? They might be able to wing you 500 UDAs here, there, but you couldn't really get anything more. Your NHS contract is pretty much capped, hence why NHS practices do private work to top things up. But the way I did it is I did two things. Is the number one, I would look down the GDC register, hearings. And I'll look down and I'll think, if anyone's got a hearing, I would see if they owned a dental practice. And then obviously if they owned a dental practice, did they own an NHS practice, right? Which had an NHS contract. And was that NHS contract near where one of my practices were? And if it was near one of my practices, then I would actually just pay them a visit. Sometimes I'd send them a letter, a really nice handwritten letters. They bloody opened it and actually read it, because a lot of time they just assume something's junk and chuck in their bin. Or I'd actually just go and knock on the door and I'd say, I'm really sorry, I heard obviously you've got a GDC issue. And to be honest, if you cut to the chase, you've got an NHS contract, it's worth something now, but if God forbid everything goes Pete Tong, and you're not a registered dentist, then you're pretty much stuffed. So maybe we should do a deal now. And then what I did is then I would essentially buy the NHS contract from them. Dang. And then I then moved it into my practices. So then I would have a practice that say started off with 10,000 UDAs, but then over time, when I'm moving NHS contracts and buying them off from other people, from other practices, I would convert it from having 10,000 UDAs to having maybe like 50,000 UDAs. And we have sites now that have 65,000 UDAs, because we literally bought all these NHS contracts and moved them in. And a lot of people don't know they can be contracts. You can. There's a way to do it. It's hard to do it. It's not easy to do it. But again, during the process of business, and again, it's like you've got to have time just to sit down and learn. And you've got to be willing to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm a dentist, okay? And you might be a bloody good dentist, but just because you're a dentist doesn't mean you're a businessman, doesn't mean you know everything. And just because you went to dental school doesn't mean that you know everything about dentistry. A lot of people, you know everything about business. A lot of people think just because they went to dental school, they know everything about everything. They can then become a bloody musician, they can sing a song, they can go into a gym and build muscle, but a lot of the time you don't. Okay, what we need to do is learn. So you learn obviously by read. I'm not very good at reading, but what I did is obviously I would look online and watch YouTube videos, things like that, and I learn about cash flow forecasts, and I learn about everything like that. What I did do, one of the only books I actually have read in my life was actually, I sat down and read the whole GDS contract, which is roughly around about, it has up to like 400, 500 clauses in there. It's roughly around about 150 pages. I read through it literally clause by clause. And then I read the dental policy handbook, which accompanies that. And then that taught me how to then move those contracts around, subcontract things, move the contracts around. Because you need to know that. And then I went even further and I thought, you know what? I read this bloody thing, okay? My business relates to NHS and bringing in contracts. I need to know exactly how the NHS works from the inside out. So then I applied for a position to become a dental advisor to work for the NHS.
Oh, right.
And I was successful and I was appointed that. And then when I went in there, I remember our first meeting, they sat us down and they said, right, there's some newbies here and there's some old school dental advisors here. Who wants to do practice inspections? And everyone put their hand up. Yeah, some people, you two can do practice inspections. Who wants to focus on complaints? Yeah, you can do that. Who wants to sit on like the judging panel, obviously, to, like essentially like a mini GDC within the NHS, and people obviously put their hands up to it. No one put their hand up for dental contracts. And then I said, who wants to learn about dental contracts and NHS claims? And I was like, got to be me. And I was like, really? It's the most boring thing. And I'm thinking, it's boring, but that's where the money is. And therefore, that ended up becoming my speciality, is the dental contracts and claiming and UDAs and the UDA system and policy handbooks and things like that. And so therefore, for 3 years, I worked inside the NHS. I was able to learn from the commissioners. It wasn't something, I was open and honest about it, so I wasn't doing anything untoward, but I was learning. I learned how to mark and write tenders for the NHS. So therefore, when I was able to then apply for tenders on my own, you can't unlearn something. I got that knowledge, so therefore I was able to then, when I then applied for a tender and I bidded for a tender, I was able to win the tenders. And one year, there was 2 tenders released in Marlborough and Westbury in Wiltshire, and we won both of them. 100%. Not many organisations win 100% of a tender that's released. And then when it came in Kent, Surrey and Sussex, we won over 50% of the tenders, again, because I knew you can't unlearn knowledge that you learn.
Sure, you learn the process.
So that was another thing. So it is about actually just being humble and actually saying, you know what, as a clinician, as a dentist, I don't know stuff, but I've got to learn it. And either I'm going to sit down and learn it by the hard way, by maybe reading, or doing the kind of the way I did it, is just learn it from people. Put yourself in that. If you want to, in the NHS organisation, shove yourself in it. Go to an LDC, learn from things. Sit down with practice owners, other people, learn it. Listen to these podcasts. You're going to learn a heck of a lot. Link up with the people after the podcast and say, look, can you please help me? Can you look at this cash flow and give me advice? And a lot of dentists out there and clinicians, practice owners and business owners might do that. Might be like, I'm even going to do it because I just want to do it because I like it, as opposed to charge a fee for it. But then there are other companies out there that will help and broker things and all this kind of stuff. But so that's another way we kind of grew the business and done it, is just willing to learn and to adapt.
Wow, well that's how can I say this? It takes a lot of humility to go and get a job like that whilst you're a business owner as well.
Yeah. It was tough, but then again, that's where the other partner, Manar, came into play, because she was able to be a fantastic mum to our daughter at the same time, but also worked as a clinician. She continued to work for over that 11-year period where we've grown this business. For over 50% of that, she worked as a clinician for someone else, and she ploughed every last penny that she had into growing the business. Didn't take anything. Wasn't the type to say, I need a Gucci handbag, or I want to go on a luxurious holiday. She was like, I'm going to give everything to this. And that's why it's nice that she's able to then benefit from it now, obviously, where it's become obviously more stable. And again, that goes back to those 3 key people: founders, entrepreneurs, and like your CEOs. And she is the ultimate founder, where she found an idea, plow everything into it. And I'm just very grateful actually that we had that business relationship as well as obviously a marriage, during that time, because I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for her. Definitely wouldn't be. I actually wouldn't be alive if it wasn't her. She saved my life numerous times. I wouldn't be sitting here. And that's again what we depict in the film, that actually the documentary we had made, The Cliff Edge is what it's called. We worked with a film production company, and they just filmed. Basically, what it was is that I just said to them, look, I want to do some online videos in the corporate world. I don't want to do anything for patients, because we don't have trouble drawing NHS patients in, because as long as you've got put a sign outside saying I'll take to NHS patients, they'll come like flocks. And I said, I just want to do some weird stuff in the corporate world, and maybe put a video here, there on LinkedIn. And found this amazing film production company who we currently still work with, Diego from Sequada Studios. And he was just filming, and then he was like, oh, let's just have a chat just actually sit down and just tell me your life from the start right to now where we are now. And he took me in very dark places, and then after like a 3-hour chat that I had with him, and emotions, one point I was happy, one point I was crying my eyes out, and then he was like, we've got a story here. This can make a fascinating documentary about how things have gone, because it's not just about, it is about the business, but it's about the people around the business, because people make businesses. And then he was like, let's just do this and have fun with it, and actually just put it out there, and we can show the corporate world, like, how you're able to do this, and the ups and downs that we had, and that's what we did, and we filmed it. And it's not filmed to release, to almost to showcase and to show off, look what we've achieved. It's not about that. We selected an audience that we wanted to show it to, and basically just said, look, we want you to understand our journey, our vision, what we stand for. And the 100 people that came to see the premiere, they all turned around and said, it's almost like that light bulb moment where they're like, I get it now. I understand everything now. I understand. Because there was a point in time where the business suffered for 2-3 years. We went through a bad patch. And obviously when you go through a bad patch, there's reputational damage, and there's people that talk about stuff that is not the reality, it's not the truth, because there's gossip and there's rumour. And we were just able to put all that to bed and actually put our story across. But in the future, maybe we might release it. But the thing is that because I don't really want to release it to the public, because actually it was almost like me wearing my heart on the sleeve. There's a lot of personal stuff in there that I think is personal to me and my ex-wife, the founder, that I think we would have to probably strip a lot of that out of respect for her, and respect for our kids, things like that. And then I think if you strip out a lot of that, then the story kind of then doesn't get told, but it doesn't have that meaning, is it? Because it is very much our journey is very much a story of two people that have gone along and been blessed with so many people on the way that have joined us for this journey. And building a business is not just about the finances and raising capital and doing this lot and investing. It's about who you bring along with that as well, the people behind it. And we've had such great people work for us that still work for us. We have 3 core people that were helped start and grow it. Rachel, Charlotte, Grima. But now we're at the opposite end of our journey, where we have a corporate team now set out, where we have some of the greatest people in the industry that work for us. John, Chelsea, Katie, another John S, Gus, these are and then with our own team, it just makes, with the originals, with those 3 originals, it just makes a fantastic head office structure.
You know what? And actually that kind of sinks into something that I guess I was going to ask initially earlier, because this is part of scaling. And it seems like a nice point to bring that up just now. And that is recruitment. Right?
Yeah.
Because recruitment, the reason I was inspired to ask that earlier was basically when you started talking about NHS practices, right? And have you ever seen, right, there's this meme, and I've seen it on a dental forum once, and it's something along the lines of, it shows this dental student, right, and it's a picture of a dental student, and they were like, it's something along the lines of, you had me until I heard you say UDA or something like that. right?
And he's off.
Yeah, and then he's off, right? And he's like there, he's like an intern. He's got this picture of an intern, but some dental goggles on, or a dental, mirror and some probes or something like that. But anyway, it's poking fun at the fact that it's hard to recruit for NHS these days. Well, or at least that's the narrative. Let's just say that's the narrative for sure. So there's that component, and then there's also the backroom staff as well, which you've also managed to find too, because you've got a lot of positive things to say about these people who've been able to assist you to get to where you are. And no CEO is the full package without the right people
100%.
around them,
No,
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of 2 questions wrapped into one. Maybe we can talk about finding NHS dentists first. Have you struggled there? And then we can move to the backroom staff.
Yeah, I mean, so the way I look at kind of the structure of a business is almost like a tree. So a tree needs to grow in 2 ways. It needs to grow up, and it also needs to grow down. It needs to grow down to embed the roots. That's as you refer to as your back office staff. Those are I refer to them as my support team. people say the head office staff or whatever we want to call corporate structure, but they're your roots. They're the people that will work in the dark, in the shit. They will wade through, be in the damp conditions, and they will be doing everything to make sure that the people that's sitting on the tree, which is your clinicians essentially, your receptionists, the people that people see, is it's a nice tree. Because without the roots, your tree isn't going to grow, and it's not going to look green and leafy and fantastic. So it's important to have the support staff, it's important to have the top staff. So going to obviously the issues of recruitment. So the way we tackled recruitment really was, first thing is getting people in that believe you have to have a long-term 5-year plan, and because I think Charlie Chaplin's quote, Charlie Chaplin, the famous actor, you want to call it, said that a life is a tragedy in close-up, but a comedy in long shot. If people just believe in the close-up, when it's ups and downs and you have shit times, they're going to go. They have to see the longer picture, because that's what's going to keep them when the times are tough. So when we select our clinicians, we're very selective on if you fit into our vision and what we essentially believe in, which is obviously the standard stuff, obviously, like, you know, putting patients first, but also like, you know, where do you want to be, where do you want to get to? Like, so when I do a clinical interview, I don't ask the clinician, okay, yeah, how long does it take you to do a crown prep, or, you know, how many cases of composite bonding have you done? I don't ask those questions. I'm like, do you own a car? Do you own a house? Do you have a flat? Do you want to own a house? When do you want to own a house? Do you want to own a flat in London or penthouse, or do you want to have a yacht? Like, what do you want to? Like, do you want to have these things? Because then, if they turn around and say, "Yeah, Ash, I want to invest. I want to own property. I want to have a lovely thing," I'm like, well, then you want to work for me then, because I will teach you how to be that person. I'll teach you how to earn good money, be a good clinician, be ethical, stay on the GDC register, safeguard your career, but take home good amount of pay. And I will promise you, if you join this journey, I will make sure that by year 2, which you've said you want to own a flat or penthouse in London, we'll do it. And I can promise you we'll do it, and we will do it. That will secure that person, rather than, let me show you our decon room and look at my CBCT and look, I've got a scanner that you can wave around and hit a patient's head. Like, yeah, that's what usually people do when they try and get an associate or a clinician to come and work for you. They'll be like, let me show you the practice, and then faff around and like, look how good this scanner is. Like, that's how we recruit. So number one, that's the difference, is that I go along with their journey. I'm embedded into their 5-year vision if they're embedded into my 5-year vision. So that's number one for clinicians. And then you'll find NHS clinicians that will work for you for that. Okay. And also, you don't also need to necessarily get them full time. You can be like, you know what, you go away and do your private stuff. You know, go in Harley Street, and you know, you can faff around and do your stuff for 3 days with them. But give me 2 days. Give me 2 days, and I can guarantee you, if money is the thing that drives you, you'll be earning more in those 2 days with me than you'll be earning 3 days there. And then you make sure you prove that, and make sure you teach them how to do that. Okay. So there's that. The other thing as well is our business model is very unique. So we have a business model where we do a skill mix. The thing is that if you go to a restaurant, in the kitchen, there's not 13 chefs that are cooking your food. You probably might just have one head chef that is at the pass, that's taking the food, checking it, puts it on the pass, goes out to the waiters. You're going to have your trainees. You're going to have your sous chefs. You're going to have a whole team. So a mix. And that's what we do in our practices. We have a skill mix where we have dentists, we have therapists, we have hygienists that work on the NHS. So we do the whole skill mix model, which not a lot of practices do, especially to our level, to our size. We were the first group of practices in 2023 to implement the dentist therapist model. We then spent 3 years tweaking it, changing it, analysing the data, working with NHS England, showing it to our current chief dental officer, Jason Wyman, saying, look what we've created, look how good it is. And basically, if anyone can try and flaw this model, tell us, and then we then tweaked it again. And then when I went to America and I took their model as well, because the thing is, in America, they use a Usually, if you go to a dental office or dental surgery, they call it dental offices in America, they have like 3 hygienists and just 1 dentist that will go between the 3 surgeries. That's how they do dentistry there. It's not 3 dentists in an office. It's usually 3 hygienists and just 1 dentist, and they will just rotate almost, and the hygienists do a lot of the work. They don't have therapists, but the hygienists do a lot of the work. So again, I took their model, integrated with our model, and then by having a skill mix model just means then recruitment is easier, because then you're not then looking to recruit in a 5 surgery practice 5 dentists. You know, maybe you need to recruit 1 dentist, 3 therapists, and a hygienist, and you're done.
Dang.
And there's more of those people in the sea that are available to want that work.
This makes sense.
So then that's how we've overcome NHS recruitment. We've ticked it off. We don't have a problem with that. It's not an issue in our practice. You know, we're pretty much 95% recruited. We have a rolling thing going on as well. Like, we keep recruiting people to like see, you know, are you good? Let's test you out. And if you're good, we might then go to someone that's not so great and that maybe is not aligned with what we're thinking. And be like, look, maybe we shake hands and say goodbye, and then replace them with someone that is good. So that's your top staff. That's your leaves, essentially, of the tree.
Yes, beautiful.
And then the roots is where I come into play. Exactly what you said. You know, the CEO doesn't do everything. You've got to have every single part of it. You've got to have your CFO. You've got to have your operations director. You've got to have your HR director. You've got to have underneath the CFO needs to sit a decent finance manager, an account, almost like an accounts manager as well. You need to have a data analyst in there. We have tried and tested working abroad, you know, by outsourcing to India and overseas to do that, and felt it didn't work. We need those people to be here. We need to be able to speak to them, you know, better see them. So they're here in offices in the UK, and yeah, they are the roots. They're the people that wade through the stuff. They're the ones that I have a good and close relationship with the clinicians. I do have that, and most of the clinicians I know very personally, and often I'll say friends with those roots, those people that work in head office. You know, I would probably die for them. You know, we have such a tight relationship, because you have to when the time is tough. And we recruited those, again, by the same concept of just saying, look, this is our vision. This is what we want to do. This is our 5-year thing, our 3-year plan. And either you come along with that ride, or if you don't want to, you don't have to. And then there's another job out there for you. If you want to do it, it's going to be fun. It's going to be good. And then we've just been grateful for the people that have come on, and then just respect them, respect what they believe in, give them time. Every week I will say to them, and some of them do it and some of them don't. I'm like, you need to have at least 1/5 of your working week needs to be, I call it bath time reading. It's basically where you just turn your laptop off, you just sit in a bath, and then you think. That's how I describe it, like that. Or you can go on a golf course and think about it, or you can sit in the toilet, or you can sit on the sofa, or go and have a massage and think. But I just need you to think about ideas and be creative, and then come and tell me what you've thought about. And then rather than just doing this, the general every day, you're just answering emails, doing that cash flow thing, you know, looking at that spreadsheet, linking that together, making those payments, or God knows what, or, you know, doing this policy document. You've got to step back and just think what you want to achieve. Be creative, paint. Do what you want to do, and then those ideas will then mean that we keep on evolving. And that's why, like, even look at our website. I mean, our website is, I think, the most unique website in the industry. It's the first 3D website there is in dentistry.
Oh, cool.
It doesn't go up and down, but it goes left and right. So it spins all the way around, and you can even zoom into. So we've got a skull there. You can zoom into the skull. Check it out. I mean, again, that come from being creative thinking.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the best marketing moves we've ever done. That is something that we kind of thought about, not we went to someone who then says, this is how you should do it because we're a marketing expert. Your marketing expert might be great for that person, but it's not great for us. So yeah, that's the whole point of being creative in terms of what we want to try and do and what we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
You know, can I just say one thing on that, right? I used to be the guy that was very much just like, okay, here's where I am, and my goal was, at that time, was to be as wealthy as possible as soon as possible. So when I was a young man, right, and I was like, right, well, it's input, output, right? The more inputs is the more output, right? So stupid. It really is, right? Because you see people, if that is your goal, and I'm not saying that should be, but should that be the case, providing that you do it ethically, I think that's fine. But if you look at, like, let's take Elon Musk as an extreme example, right? And I'm not talking about politics. I'm not talking about anything like that. Leave that at the door. I'm just like, look at this guy, okay, and what he's done, right? The guy's a trillionaire, right? Now, that would very easily be explained if he had more hours in the week than the rest of us.
Yes.
But he doesn't.
He doesn't.
It's kind of a law of physics, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't, right? So what has he figured out? He's figured out how to get more out of each and every hour, right? Now, if you're blindly there, just going through the motions every single day, okay, you are in a zone where you're trying to maximize your outputs by maximizing your inputs, right? But for the same input as you know, he's figured out how can he get more out of each and every input. That's basically what he's figured out, right? And to do that, you need to think. And I'm completely opposite now, right?
Yeah.
Some of my most productive days are when I go to a cafe, eat something, have a matcha, maybe, you know, I've got into matcha recently. It's all right. It's all right. It's a little bit overhyped, but I quite like them. It's a healthy alternative. You know, and just have one killer idea. And sometimes I can think about certain times where I had an idea that was far more productive than me just sat there even working all day, you know?
Yeah,
and that completely eradicated that belief in my head. And it's kind of the Google philosophy, isn't it? Like, this is literally what they do in the Google offices. You have time every week that's sectioned off, that's cordoned off, and that's your creativity time.
Yeah.
And whatever idea you come up with, if you come up with some new IP, Google keep 50% of it and you keep 50% of it, right? And this is during this time, and it might even be more than 20% now, but they were whenever they created this philosophy that is embedded into their business, you know, I think a few decades ago, this was very avant-garde, and it still is, to be fair, right? And it sounds like you've benefited from that as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Very cool.
And we use art as a way to try to encourage people to be creative, only because I love art. So if you go into offices in Crawley, you would walk in the door, and the first thing you'll see is a statue, and it is a skull. It's a metallic skull, which is an imprint. It was actually my skull. So we had a metal artist come in and take an imprint of my face, and then he made a skull from this, and then impressions of my teeth, and then our ceramic, the labs we usually work with, she brand from the lab technician, she made my teeth in gold, and so we have that. So it's not like we have that because we just think it's good to just have a skull, but it's like people look at it and then it's like saying, it's almost like subliminally saying to them, right? Just subliminally saying to them the message of just think outside the box, think differently. Just that's all you got to do. And then you walk around the corner and you've got some graffiti on the wall. Again, it's the same thing. It's not because we just fancied having street art on the wall in our office, but it's the whole concept of just think differently. Just try to be creative. I think that's important that you've got to have in any business, because we're all doing the same thing. If you think about it, the business of dentistry it's not like we're trying to invent a new atom, you know, or you know, some sort of molecular science to then take us to the moon. Everyone is doing the same thing pretty much in dentistry. But if you try to be slightly creative and think outside the box, just that slight change will then probably be completely different. And that's what happened obviously with our business model. It's different to other business models, and that slight change then produces the results and fantastic results that we are proud of.
And I'm going to say, because obviously this is the Dentist Invest podcast, so part of one of the things we focus on through this podcast is the commerciality and that side of dentistry. I'm going to say, just to go back to your model a second ago, when you have the dental practice, you've got the one dentist, okay, you maybe got the 2-3 therapists working under them, and you know, maybe you've got a hygienist in there as well, something along those lines. I'm going to say, and tell me if you're, well, to be honest, I mean, I'm sure you'll be all right to answer this. I don't think this is going to be a secret or not, but part of the dentist remuneration is when they quarterback the fillings down to the therapist, that what boosts their paycheck is they get part of a cut of the UDAs. Is that fair to say? Is that how you structure things?
No, because that's how people look at the conventional therapist model, by it going down. Whereas what we did is we flipped it the other way around. I'm
so glad I asked. I'm interested to hear.
So so this kind of like model of dentistry that we have has 5 key elements. We never reveal what the 5 is, because if you reveal what the 5 is and you give your secret sauce away, okay, we're happy to give 1 or 2 bits, but no one's ever been able to connect the dots to make sure they know what the 5 is. And even like internally, no one knows what the 5 is. The only person
This
that
is
does
the
me.
Coke recipe right here.
It's the KFC recipe, for the chicken.
Gotcha.
So the way kind of it works, the way we're able to do it is it's direct access to the therapist. So you, as a patient, you don't go and see the dentists. You will firstly see a therapist, because the therapists can, and they are bloody clinicians. They're trained to do this. They can examine you, diagnose, take radiographs, get to a certain point. And most people that go to a dentist, again, our model of dentistry is family dentistry. We're not jumping those fashionable waves of composite bonding, and then 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was veneers, and then all this implant stuff, which is great stuff, and it does fit into a business model, but it goes through peaks and troughs. You will have a down month in December because people are not probably going to be doing, because they want to spend money on their Christmas presents, and you might have an uptick in January where people obviously want to change their smile. With our one, with family office dentistry, routine general dentistry, that's going to be steady all through the 12 months of the year. So for all the seasons, you're going to be stylish and it's going to be steady. Okay. So the way as a patient, like you and me, we don't need to have a root canal done every 6 months when we go see a dentist. We're going to see a dental practice. And if we are having a root canal trim done every 6 months, something must be wrong, We're not always going to be having an extraction every 6 months, and we're not going to be needing a crown every 6 months. Our routine dentistry can be done by therapists. 85%, and we looked at the data, we looked at the NHS, BSA data, and this is why it's really important to look at the data. And again, something that other groups didn't do and other groups don't do. We took our data and we analysed it, and then I went to the BSA and I took all the fucking data about all the dental practice and analysed that as well. And I'm talking about analysing it not with AI, by the nitty gritty, looking at a spreadsheet and looking, do lookups and all that kind of stuff. 85% of the dentistry that is done in the UK can be done by a therapist.
Wow.
Because it's routine dentistry. You go, like me and you, we go every 6 months, and we need a checkup, maybe a scale, and maybe the odd filling. We're not needing to see the dentist to do the crowns and the bridges and the root canals and everything like that every 6 months. So that means then we're able to then have our clinicians working. And it means then that we have dentists that work for us that actually do the dentistry they went into university for. Because when I was looking to become a dentist, and I think this is where burnout comes from. Burnout doesn't come from the treadmill of the NHS UDAs. Burnout comes from because you go into a practice every day and you're doing a bloody checkup and a scale, and it's a band 1. And then the next next patient is an examination, bite wings, a scale. And it's a kid, examination, fly varnish. Then like mid-morning, you're just bored. Whereas imagine if your day was root canal, crown prep, bridge prep, denture fit, dentistry. It's like, shit, this is exciting stuff, because that's certainly the dentistry I went in it for. Then it's an extraction before lunch. So you're as a dentist, your days are flying by, and you're just focusing on the dentistry that you wanted to do. So we have an uptick on our dentists being happy with the dentistry they want to do, but also you're then as a dentist you've become a specialist in your own right. So you're just doing the top end stuff. So therefore your remuneration therefore is going to be high. So you're not giving away any of your UDAs. You're not giving away any of your money, because you end up being the last cog in the turn if needed. So the therapists do end up giving away their band 1s, almost their examination and their fillings to you. You could essentially, so as a dentist, patients are almost presented to you as a package and saying by the therapist, right, here's Mrs. Jones, I've already done the examination, I've already taken the bite wings, I've already taken the periapicals, I've done the fillings that she needed, I've done her perio, she's now the perfect patient, all we need to do is the upper left for root canal and crown. And you look at it and be like, no, I don't want to do it because I can't do it, it's too complex, let's refer to a specialist outside of here, or I'll do that. And then you just do the end of it. Hello, Mrs. Jones, I'm interested to do your root canal and your crown. So you're satisfied, you're just doing your dentistry, and then you get, obviously in NHS dentistry, you get your 12 UDAs, or what a lot of our dentists do is you utilize the opportunity to do the root canal in the NHS, and then you can upsell a lovely zirconia crown. And therefore you're then doing private dentistry. So then your earnings therefore, so as a clinician, where we just need, say, a 5 surgery practice, we have maybe 1 full-time, their earnings as a dentist is through the roof. They're earning above 150, 200k a year as a NHS dentist. Okay? And also we're able to then offer them preferential UDA rates where we don't have to give them 13, 14 pounds a UDA. Some of our associates are on 18 pounds a UDA. as their net to take home. And that's not because we're desperate to keep them working, but then we can pay the therapist a little bit less. But then it still fits into their model of what they expected to earn. So as a therapist, you'd expect it to earn anywhere between 40,000 and 70,000 a year. That's kind of like your UK standard, whether you're a private or an NHS therapist, that's what you've gone into therapy work to do. So as long as you're taking home that, it's your quid's in. Obviously what we do is we train our therapists to be better than that, so they're earning 80,000, 90,000, even 100,000. Some of our therapists are earning 15, 20k a month, so they're in the really top end.
That is
okay.
Nuts, man. Yeah.
Then can you see now how the models work? Can you see how like the pin is now dropping? You're thinking, because he's flipped it around. It's not the patients come and see the dentist and then you refer the shit to the therapist, because that doesn't work. Because all that does is a dentist would see a patient, say, oh shit, I can't be asked to do this, give it to a therapist who then gets a written treatment plan, is looking and thinking, well, that's a deep filling, that's going to be in the bloody pulp, I don't want to do that, and then end up the patient's being ping-ponged back between the dentist and the therapist. We stopped that by having a different model and implemented it, and then it works. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's fair play, mate. It makes complete sense. I've just never thought about it like that, and it's leveraging direct access, and you're basically funneling the more high-end technical stuff up to the dentist, and you've kind of got three people who are quarterbacking it, maybe 3-4 therapists who are quarterbacking everything to the dentist.
Exactly.
And then the dentist time is leveraged, but also so is the therapist, because their time is not being wasted basically. Wow.
So everyone's got 100% diary fill. We're working 7 days a week in all of our practices, so everyone's happy. And also the clinicians that we take on, so the therapists that obviously work for us, a lot of them are your dentists in waiting because they're doing the ORE exams because they're international dentists. So for them it's really good because they almost start off in a level where they can be a therapist and do the basic stuff which they, before they start doing it, but then they can liaise with the dentist to learn from them. So yes. when they're presenting a patient, I see it because I watch it. The dentist in the practice will sit down with the therapist and be like, look, I'm not being, you told me, can I take this tooth out? Have you seen that this is an 8? Look at how the ID, the ID nerve, canal is wrapped around the bloody root. That needs to be referred to an oral surgeon to dealt with in a hospital because it's going to be a disaster. So then the therapist is then, I'm learning. Okay, I'm learning that. Okay, I understand that. Or they might say, okay, I think this patient can have a crown. The dentist look at the margins on the bloody root. It's down by the cortical bone. No one's going to be able to get a margin down there, so that is unrestorable, so that needs an extraction. And then the therapist then are learning, so it's all like a learning thing as well. Again, it goes back to the vision and the concept of me saying also to the therapist at the start of their interview, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? I'm taking my exams and I want to do my exams to be a dentist, and I'm like, well, you want to join on this train then, because I will not only be able to give you a really good income as a therapist and you'll be developing and homing your skills, but also in 5 years' time I can guarantee you'll be a dentist and you'll be the best bloody dentist, because you're going to learn day one and you're going to be literally working side by side with a clinician in a practice, and you're going to work as a unity in a team. And again, so that goes back again to the concept we talked about retention, recruitment, and then obviously retaining them as well.
Well, I mean, all I can say is something must be going right, because it's got to where it has. Are you with me? With regards to retention and recruitment, and that's the thing that people struggle with. And I love how you found a way to make the proposition as to what your practices can give to these people so juicy and valuable that retention and recruitment isn't an issue. And this is part of you said that there was a secret sauce there. I think there's multiple secret sauces here. I think there's actually a lot of things to unpack here. Ashkan, I'm just so friggin' conscious that these podcasts are usually like 40-50 minutes, and I feel like we're no need to apologize, right? Because this is gold dust. And you know what I think we should do? I think we should do this. Okay, we should shake hands. All right, that was a dap for anybody who's listening to this podcast. That was a dap and a handshake that we're going to commit to shooting podcast number 2 at some stage. But in the meantime, I just wanted to say on behalf of the Dentists Who Invest audience, thanks so much for your time. Ash, your wisdom and your knowledge, flipping unbelievable. One of the best podcasts. I feel fired up having listened to you talk. We definitely got to commit to that part 2, and I'm looking forward to making that happen. But in the meantime, mate, thanks so much for your time, and we'll speak again soon.